So what we're going to do for today's call, any questions that you have, feel free to put in the chat as we go. And when I'm presenting, Cami is going to manage our chat for us and then interrupt with questions and stuff as they're relevant to the sections, and then vice versa once we get to marketing. So please feel free to put them in the chat as we go. No need to wait to the end because we're going to move quickly through a number of different topics for today's presentation. All righty. So I think most of you know our Open Farm Days team. So quickly running through that, but we've got Suzanne Kelly, who is here. Suzanne manages the overall program for Open Farm Days. She is our fearless leader. We've got Chris Ringette, who comes in and she helps us seasonally. So you can expect to receive phone calls from Chris during the course of Open Farm Days after everything starts to go live from our website. Cami O'Hanlon, for those of you that haven't had a chance to meet her yet, is our amazing marketing and media guru, and incredibly insightful and lots of new and fresh ideas. So just absolutely love everything that she brings to the table. And of course, me, I will help you with some of your planning, your regulatory, and sort of general conversations about Open Farm Days, and happy to talk to you on a one-on-one basis. All right, so Open Farm Days, because most of you are very familiar with this program, conceptually nothing has really changed. It is that province-wide open house, which really invites Albertans to learn and experience about rural life. It is still the weekend. It is always that third weekend in August, which coincides with Local Food Week. It allows us to really amplify messaging around that time of year. And, visitors are invited into rural Alberta to really explore things. What's interesting is different farms take different approaches. Some have a monetary component that's really important to them, and some don't have anything that's saleable at all, which is absolutely fine as well. We don't prioritize one or the other. It's really up to the individual businesses of what some of their goals are. So we can kind of roll with any type of planning. So just be mindful that when we talk metrics of numbers and Open Farm Days program success, the monetary one is not the only important part of it. All right, so we started developing thematics. This will be our fourth one. We started with the 10th year. And the reason that we started doing this was it was an opportunity for us to really capitalize on some of that marketing initiative that we were trying to do. And what we found after about 10 years is the media were asking, well, what's new this year? And the reality is our program is very consistent and it's the same. It's really about highlighting farms and really connecting Albertans with their local food story. And so while that wasn't changing, for us to be able to get that exposure that we were looking for, we needed to have a little bit of a hook. So we started developing a thematic, and this will be our 13th annual one. And we will be talking about water. And what I love about our concepts is that this is something for this year that everybody can kind of get on board with. There's water pretty much in every type of farmer business that we're working with, and each water story is a little bit unique. And Cami will talk about it a little bit later, but we invite you to share your water stories with us as part of our year-round programming for it. Our local artist this year is Wendy Johnson, who is out of Red Deer County. She has farming roots, and this is her beautiful picture from Rosebud. Our year this year we're following the United Nations Year of, and this year for 2025 is Year of the Glacier. So we are taking our own spin on it, which is talking about our water story. And here's just a teeny tiny heads up, but we will be still following United Nations. This will be the third year in a row for 2026, and it'll be rangelands and pastoralists. So that's just a sneak peek into some of the things that we will be talking about for next year. Now, I mentioned briefly some of our metrics, and I think it's important to talk a little bit about the numbers. Some of them are more important than the others, so we'll kind of start at the top here. When we talk about the number of farms, our goal is not necessarily just more farms. Our goal is to help our farms build bigger and better programming and to be able to expand the right way into agritourism. And everybody comes at it from a different point. So we're happy to meet you where you're at. But it isn't necessarily more farms. It's really about having those amazing engagement pieces. We've done a little bit of research over the last few years, and we have tremendous feedback from our visitors of the amazing weekends that they had. And our goal is really to continue to expand on those incredible experiences. So that's kind of where we're at for our farms. Now you can take a look at the chart to the right, and you can see that from year one, we had a nice growth starting at 41 and finished up at about 150 right before COVID. COVID was a reset for us. And you can see it on all three graphs, but last year we hit an all-time high of 152 farms. I will say we had about 170 that were actually registered, but by the time Open Farm Days came around with fires and different things happening around the province, we landed on 152, so a record high for us. But more is not always better, so that's something to keep in mind. The next one is spend, and you can see that the chart follows a very similar pattern. Lots of great growth and increasing visitor spend. We know that those numbers will continue to go up. And what we're delighted to hear is feedback from farms that have sold CSA boxes, that have repeat customers, or have actually started to develop year-round customers. So those things are very exciting for us. But keeping in mind that isn't, the primary goal or the only goal, as we have many businesses that don't sell anything. So yeah. And then the one that does matter to us is that bottom chart there, which is our participation. And it's very exciting for us to see an increase in growing numbers of participation. And so we're kind of happy, but I think just wanted to share a little bit of some of those numbers so you've got an idea, big picture, where Open Farm Days is before we start to get into some of the little pictures about your farm. So our approach for growing agritourism, it's pretty consistent of what we're trying to do. And what we want to talk about a little bit for the rest of this program is really that combination of what is our role and what is your role. And I think what you'll find is our roles are very similar. It's just ours is a little bit more on a macro level, and yours will really be sort of that micro level of, what is your farm doing. So really, what we're doing is we're marketing a province-wide program. We're working with the Open Farm Days website. We're providing coaching and regulatory information of how you can successfully do these events. We're providing you with event signs, road signs and farm signs, buttons, evaluation forms. We cover insurance for your farms. Sometimes this is incremental to what you already have, and sometimes if you just have a traditional farm insurance, yours won't cover anybody coming on your property. So that's what this will cover. We market wide to the province, and province-wide, we obviously do recruitment. We do a lot of work in trying to establish new clusters in different regions and trying to bring those groups together. And then we help with activities around coaching and events of what you can do, how you can do it, and some ideas and stuff that have worked in the past for other farms here in Alberta or other ones globally as well. For you, what we're looking for you to do is to develop your own farm-wide program. So absolutely with our help, but you are the champion for your farm. It is your event. We have our big website, but your page is an integral part of our site. So helping you to understand what should be on there, and how you can start to grow some of the marketing pieces that you have. And Camille is going to walk us through that a little bit later this morning. Regulation and forms is understanding what things technically do have to be done to have a successful program and to be on the right side of the rules, which no one likes rules, but if they're out there, we might as well be on the right side of them. Organizing volunteers and staffing for your space, marketing your region, and we're going to talk a little bit about partnership in a second, and neighbor farms, how clusters kind of work, and getting beyond that competition versus collaboration. So that's a little bit, and then of course having activities and your on-farm stuff all ready to go. So we've done a little bit of research, and I want to share a couple of our quick findings with you. And we talked a little bit about the attendance numbers. So we had roughly about 52,000 people last year, and the program continues to grow annually. So when we look at the potential, it's tremendous. But when we look at the population of Alberta, there's still a long way for us to go. What we're really excited to see as we continue to kind of measure awareness and things like that, there's a growing awareness in the Open Farm Days program, which is great. We're entering the 13th year. I hope we keep gathering new people. But every year we do have the same feedback that, oh gosh, I've never even heard of this before. And so that's on all of us to help continue to talk about it, to promote it, and to help bring more and more people out to the region. So I think that part is good. Where are visitors coming from? That's a really interesting question. And it's, there's no kind of clear answer on that. But we're trying to measure how far people are willing to come. So you can take a look, the first green bar there is really indicating, how far people are willing to go. So you can probably tell that most people are looking for that smaller short haul, visit. They're looking sort of in that sort of 100-kilometer radius. They kind of want to get out to the farm, but they don't really want to get too far. What we're really interested in is that dark blue and the light blue ones. There's a lot of people that are willing to travel either any distance for the right experience or a considerable distance. So that's the group that has the most potential for for the full province, I would say. Our clusters, when we have stronger groups that are working together, it is a bigger draw for people to come out. And if there's 4 or 5 farms in the same area, we know that those areas will have bigger visitation. So a lot of times people are a little bit concerned of, well, if my neighbor is doing an event and we both have cows and chickens, then they'll go there instead of to me. And that isn't the case. The case is when there's groups together, even if you have similar things, they will visit both the farms. It's really interesting as we've grown, and now that we have the ability to track. So with our reservation system with Front Door, it allows us to see how many people booked certain places. So what we're finding is that there will be sort of an anchor or a draw to a region, and somebody will book their group into that space. And then what they'll do is then they will see what else is around there. So for example, last year when we were doing alpacas, obviously we had a marketing push on that. So what we found was people would look at some of those mills or alpaca farms, and then all of the farms in the vicinity would actually get those incremental bookings. So because they were going to one place, they would visit the neighboring farms. So really that opportunity about collaboration and clusters is really, really strong. So something that we want to really, really want to emphasize. So basically what we say is the more the merrier. Marketing and partnership really should be part of your plan. 84% of our visitors are interested in multi-day excursions and in planned routes. So what they want to know is, I can visit 4 or 5 farms in that area, and here's what my day looks like. They're also interested in stops to eat. They're interested in other attractions and monuments. So I think that kind of says a lot. Another one, 64% of our visitors are interested in a range of overnight options. So camping, glamping, farm stays. Those are pretty significant numbers, which shows the visitor inclination and interest in exploring rural Alberta and spending more time. So those are kind of numbers that we want you to think and keep in the back of your mind as you start to plan out your thing. Who could you be working with? Who are some interesting people that are in your area? Who has neat either campgrounds or glamping opportunities? Or there, niche hotels? Are there restaurants that are doing local food stories? Are there restaurants that are farm to table? If there's not, should you be talking to them if you have something to sell? So again, those are things to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you start to your planning. So where it all starts is, of course, with our registration. I'm going to assume most of you that are here have already registered, but if you haven't, then we suggest you head over to the site and sign on up. As soon as you sign up, you will get the new host codes for this year. So those will come out to you, and that'll allow you into the resource on the back end of Open Farm Days. We do update our host access annually, so there will be a new passcode. So if you have it already loaded in your system, you'll have to override it with the new one. When we get into that host section, there's a special section called host resources. So that'll give you a bit of information around the insurance and permits, farm gate signs and road signs, when those come. For us, we reprint those. We ask people to hold onto their farm signs for at least 3 years. It's a considerable cost for the program. So it just helps us to be able to put our dollars into marketing and things like that, which is good for everybody. We do culinary coaching. We have marketing and advertising. There's online profiles, portable toilet reimbursement forms, information about the postcards and posters, the information about joining our Facebook groups, and the online portal. So when you register, all of this information will be coming up. The next part is moving on to putting it on the map. And I would ask everyone to spend a little bit of time here. We spend a lot of time every year going through the back end of the site and making sure that actually your accurate information is there. So do spend the time. People are a little bit nervous when they're traveling through rural roads. And when the pin drop ends up in the middle of a lake, it's kind of frustrating for everyone. So spend some time, make sure you've got the right coordinates down, and then go back and double check and make sure that everything is good. The one thing that we want you to think about as a farm is that our guests are going on the Plan My Trip page. They're taking a look at the areas, they're looking at where they are, and they're planning. So the information that goes into your website and your webpage on the Open Farm Days site is really critical for people finding that experience that they're looking for. So make sure you've got your address correct. Make sure when you're building that stuff that everything kind of looks accurate. That will really help. Once you've got that information in, then our signage starts to kick in. So you're going to find that we've got the signage and wayfinding signs. Those signs for people in their first year will come out usually towards the end of July. We do have some farms that actually leave their Open Farm Days signs up year round if they have farm gates that are open year round, and it just helps to identify them, and they use those as extra signing. But figuring out the proper placement, where those should go, and what's going to help draw people to the right space is really kind of a good idea. So think about now where you might want to be placing that sign. So
Tanis,
yes.
just 2 questions in the chat, so I'll just jump in. The first being, when approximately should we be receiving the new passcodes? Some members don't have anything yet. I believe, let me talk to Susanna about that. It should be automated, but if not, we might just have a date upcoming that we release everything. So I'll make sure that I get onto that, and then we can potentially send out a newsletter with that information. And then the second one that is more pertinent to you, Tanis, is there a spot on the site to know where other farms in our area are participating, so we could reach out to collab and work together for getting visitors?
Yes. So yes and yes. So to talk about your registration, it should automate when you register with the host code. So that should come back to you. Having said that, if you registered and didn't receive that, if you could just put that in the chat, let me know. What we can do is we do have a full list of who's registered so far, so we can make sure that we just send out that updated host code to everybody now. But it is registering that triggers the code that comes out. For the farms that are registered in the region, basically to get a good sense of where we're at, we had 152 farms last year. So if you go onto the website, you can see basically who was registered. I will say we had about, considering the growth we had, I think it was 26% new farms last year. So I think that if you take a look at what we had last year, that's probably a good indication. And then we will lean on you each locally to help engage with new farms and invite some of your neighbors if you've had a good experience with Open Farm Days, or if you're trying it for the first time. Wonderful to invite people in your vicinity to make this bigger and better and to really make this a whole celebration of rural Alberta. But what we do is we will flip over our website once we get to a certain point. Everyone that has existing web pages and stuff like that, like we will switch it over to the 2025 newly registered ones, but we're still a ways out from that. We will be able to circulate some lists early on. So if you've got specific questions about who's in your area, absolutely we can do that. In terms of registration, where we sit right now, we're probably sitting at about 20 farms. So it is probably not a huge advantage to have the list right now, but shortly we'll be able to send it. We probably have the bulk of our registrations come in, sort of that January, February. And then, of course, the stragglers, as we start calling them in April, because they haven't signed up yet. So sorry, not a robust list yet, but we will have those shortly. All right. So, you put a really good description down. People can find your pin drop on the map. It led you to the right spot. We've got our signage, which is going to be on your, the critical turn paths getting straight to your farm. And then we get to your farm. It's interesting. Over the years, I've been out to many, many farms, and we would love all the parking to look like the one, either of those two images, but that's not always the case. What's really funny is the picture on the left, obviously it's a natural photo of, it's a parking lot, so people understand where to park. Whereas the one on the right is just a field, which is just south of Calgary here. And you park 2 cars in a row and then everybody just follows suit. But if you don't have anything, you really do end up with a dog's breakfast. It's all over the place. So after you put down your signs and people know where to turn, those first 2, whether they're farm equipment or cars or whatever it is, if you park them in a place you want other people to go, that is absolutely your best bet to have some level of organization. After people have parked, we get to the visitor check-in part. And what we strongly recommend is a little welcome table. Obviously, your sign can be there, your welcome table, and somebody to greet people. We also talk about that programming and plan that you have for the day. So that's a great place to have it. It's a great place to talk about what you're doing on your farm for the full day. It's a great place to make sure that people don't have any pets that they've brought with them. And also, if you've got any, newsletters or anything that you want people to sign up for, that's a great place to kind of gather all of that information. So a little table out front is great. And we'll talk a little bit of emergency preparedness and things like that. But that person that's at the front, which is right past your parking, should also have any valuable information about, first aid kits or fire extinguishers or any of those types of things. So that sort of should be one of your major hubs and really a good place to start. The next part becomes your programming and agenda. So people have parked, they've come in through the entranceway, and what can people experience on your farm? And it's really interesting. And a lot of time we've got a lot of farms that have spent a lot of time developing a really robust plan, but they don't always tell people. So they don't know that there's going to be a wine tasting at 10, 1, and 3. They don't know that there's a barn tour at 2 o'clock. They don't know that there's, something going on in the back end. So having that information readily available, so when people walk in, they know. And we've had a lot of conversations with farms over the years where they sort of say, well, it's based, like when people are get there, they just have to ask and we'll show them. But these are guests and they don't know what's being offered and they don't want to be making too many assumptions about what's going on. So, I think it's really important to have that list, and then people are happy to ask questions around it. You can absolutely deviate from your plan. If you had planned to do, a walk at 10 o'clock and at 9:30, you've got, 40 people standing there, if you want to go early and do things, that's fine. You can deviate from your plan. But if you have something that's printed and everybody knows, you're really set up for a more successful event. Now, I know that when we start talking about people on your land, it's a little bit concerning. So the keeping it safe part is is important. And it's also good for you guys to know that there are things that can be on and off limits. If there's places you don't want people to go, if there's barns that people shouldn't be going into, if there's animals that people should be staying away from, absolutely, that is your right and your opportunity to keep specific things off limits. So figuring out how to mark that, what things to use. You can use printed signs, you can use kind of off limit tape, you can use all sorts of stuff. We do have some templates that people can print out to, private only, no entry, that kind of thing. I will say that most people are very, very respectful. They don't know where to go or where not to go. So if you tell them, they're going to be good. The other part about keeping things safe, we know that there's farm equipment, we know that there's chemicals, we know that there's animals that people should stay away from. So having those places off limits, totally fine. Just make it clear so people can follow along. The equipment part is also a very important one, as you know, and I would say sometimes children, but the adult children as well can sometimes be a little bit intrigued and interested with some of your farm equipment. So if you have your farm equipment and you want it on display, that's wonderful. Cami, you can go to the next slide. And people can go and check things out, and that's a lot of fun. If you want them to be look only, then a little sign that says please keep off will help, because they won't know the difference between something that they can play on or get in or something that is off limits. So we ask, obviously, some of the obvious ones, make sure that the keys and stuff are removed, parking brakes are engaged, wheels are locked or blocked, to keep things from rolling, those types of things. So those are important things to really consider as you're looking at some of your farm equipment. And just do know that for those children and adults alike, that will be a draw. So this gets us to the point where we hope to never spend any time on, but which is emergencies. And we ask everyone to have an emergency plan. So what that means is that the numbers of, whether it's fire, ambulance, those types of things. Those numbers should not just be with you, but they should be at the front. They should be at the check-in. So if something happens, if somebody slips and falls getting out of their car, that somebody at the front at that check-in actually has numbers and stuff as well. And we have a template for emergency plans and the numbers and things that you should have. So it's a good thing just to print out, and that your volunteers that are scattered around your farm will also have copies of it, of those printed plans. The first aid kit, again, it's a good thing to have on hand, and the staff need to be kind of comfortable with, hey, if anything happens, here's what we do. So fortunately, we've never really had any problems with Open Farm Days. We like to keep it that way, but obviously in situations, it's good to have a little bit of a plan there. Next, we move on to staffing and merchandising. So you can see that some of the volunteers, sometimes they're family members and kids, and sometimes they're 4-H clubs and different groups, but those play an important role. And a lot of times we do have like ag societies in different places that will have volunteers. So if you are struggling finding some volunteers, reach out and we can have some conversations about it. But that staffing point will really help make your day run smoothly. And it really sometimes becomes such a great community event to have. When we talk about merchandising, that's another thing. So for those of you that are selling things, really important to have everything priced. Make it really, really easy for your visitors to pay. We talk about that sort of transparency, so that people know what it is. So sometimes it's by the weight, but sometimes people get a little surprised when they come to pay. So if it's possible to actually have stuff priced of, a bunch of this is $5, this 5-pound roast is whatever dollars, that really helps. It's interesting because we do get this feedback back from our visitors, but it's kind of funny in a sense, because you go to a supermarket and you understand you're paying by the pound, but sometimes they just want to see that price point as well. And if you have some sort of square reader or some sort of card, that's great. Put that on your farm information on your website. If you don't, if this is cash only, make sure you put that on the website as well. A lot of people don't always travel with cash, but if they're reading ahead and they know that you might have a food truck out there and that you're selling local produce and things like that, and if it's a cash only business, it's just really important for people to know that. All right, this brings us to our last two slides, animals. Animals are the biggest draw for Open Farm Days. When we ask people, when you think about Open Farm Days, what are you expecting? The first thing is they want to see animals, and they want to introduce their children or grandchildren to animals. And some of them have specific types they'd like to see, but overall, they just want to see the animals. So they don't know which ones they can get up close and personal with and which ones need to be safely and securely behind a fence. But the fences, of course, are for your animal safety as well as for the people. Electric fences, I will say, not everybody understands them or knows. If you do have them, if they can be turned off, we do recommend it. If they cannot, then we suggest at that entrance point that you indicate what your fencing is like and what that means. Animals that are on display in the public area should be healthy. And we understand we all get sick and animals do too. So, but we also know that if a visitor who's not familiar with the farm sees a sick animal, they don't always think logically or rationally. Sometimes they're wondering, is that animal being taken care of? So if there are other places to remove any animal that's under treatment out of immediate view, that's not necessarily a bad thing, unless you want to have an educational piece around it and talking about what's going on and what you're doing. But just to kind of flag that a sort of a city dweller's perspective on animals and health might be different than rural people that actually understand the animals. All right, gates and latches, make sure everything is closed and secured. Super important because things can go wrong. And also gaps for children. So if there's things that posts and stuff that need to be replaced, we of course expect our parents to take care of the kids, but isn't always the case. And again, at that entrance point, make sure that people are looking for any pets that they might have brought. I will say the guests aren't looking to be ignorant and they're not looking to be disruptive, but these people with these, tiny purse dogs and different things think, oh, it's a lovely day to go to the country and bring my dog will be fine. And they don't understand that there's guardian dogs. They don't understand that their dog is going to freak out when it sees a chicken or a sheep or whatever it is. So they're not meaning to be ignorant, but they just don't understand the roles of guardian dogs and things like that. So, and they might be indignant and insist that their dog is fine and that it's going to stay in their arms, but that, and we do really try and push it. We put it out on their webpage. We put it on the front. We posted on Facebook, leave your pets at home. This is not a day in the country for them. But every year we do hear about a few dogs that do end up coming out to the farms. And then lastly, bee areas, we do have, of course, people that do have allergic reactions. So if you do have bees and stuff on your property and hives, something that you probably want to flag just at the front entrance area as well, and possibly on your website. So that's it for that. And then lastly, food. So now is a great time to be thinking about what you might want to be doing with food, local craft beer or local wines, or distilled products on your farms. If you want to sample food, if you want to be selling picnic lunches, if you're going to host a barbecue, or if you're going to bring food trucks, that sort of thing. If you have food that you're producing on your farm and you would like to be showcasing it, all of these things, pretty much there's ways to do them. It just takes a little bit more planning. We have some work that we'll do with Alberta Health Services to help you get up and running with food events. We work with Tony Hazelwood from AGLC who will help you get liquor permits. But all of these things are things that you want to take a couple of months to plan for. So what I would say to you is anyone who is looking to talk loosely or at a high level about your farms and what you're looking to plan, if you want to bounce some ideas around, absolutely reach out and give me a call. If you would like to look at doing food on your farm and you're trying to figure out what that means and what that could look like, book some time to talk with me, and I'm happy to walk you through Alberta Health Services and what that looks like. And if you'd like to serve alcohol or have picnics, I can connect you with AGLC. We will have presentations by Alberta Health Services and AGLC scheduled in May. But anyone who is looking to get a jump start on things, I am happy to talk to you guys about that. I do have Mondays sort of dedicated to Open Farm Days, and you can reach me. I've got office hours that basically run from 10 till 5 every Monday. So book a meeting with me, and happy to spend some time talking about what you may or may not like to do. If anyone has any questions, happy to open up for a couple of minutes, and then I'll hand it over to Cameo to talk about what we're going to be doing with media and marketing for this year.
Excellent. Thank you, Tanis. So in terms of, for those of you that were in our last marketing presentation, we went over a lot of social media related things, content collection, etc. So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus a little bit more on the website listing elements to support your basically visitors looking for information about your Open Farm Days, the ways in which you can best provide that information and really attract people to your doorstep. So sorry, I'm just going to check the chat real quick. Yes, we will be sending, and also we'll be sending the slides as well as a recording out to everyone afterwards, mid this week, once we get the recording ready. Okay, so diving right in. So I find that the best way to approach the marketing for Open Farm Days, it is very layered, and that's marketing for anything, really, right? You've got your social, you've got your websites, you've got the way that you can fill out your farm listing, you've got your communities and your neighbors, and there's all these different angles that you can, layer together to create the most comprehensive marketing approach possible, paint the most vivid picture of your farm, and ultimately attract visitors there to have a successful Open Farm Day weekend, and future relationships and weekends and sales and things that can trickle down from that as well. So when it comes to this, your digital presence is huge these days. Of course, Tanis just went through all of the elements that you need to get ready to physically get your farm ready to roll. But there also comes in this day and age, the time where it's time to also build up your digital presence as robust so that you're findable, you're searchable, and that potential visitors can come across you and say, all right, this is a place that I maybe do want to visit. This is a place that I know reasonably what I can expect. I'm going to add it to my list. Because unfortunately, the backside of that is again, in this day and age, if you don't have a robust digital presence and you have potential visitors and they land on your page and they don't see much information, or maybe they don't see complete information about the things, they're like, I'm not sure, I don't want to take the gamble and or the risk, and they might plan to go somewhere else. So these points here, what we really say is that social proof is really, really key. And what this means is it's a strong online presence that you're leaving them with, essentially, let's say, clues or information as to what they can expect to experience. So it's photos, maybe it's reviews, maybe it's just really comprehensive, reassuring information that's well written and really able to paint the clearest picture. So in terms of how to accomplish this best, photos are huge, especially given, if you've been in one of my presentations, you've known that I really harp on this, but farming is such a visual activity, and you guys have the luxury of having likely photos of animals or crops or machinery, these things that are quite capturing, right? So definitely do put an emphasis on that photo element of your Open Farm Days listing, of your website, of your social, etc. This can also be, especially as we get towards the event itself, even a simple video or set of photos that's outlining, okay, here's our turnoff, here's our entrance farm, here's even our Open Farm Days signage, here's where you park. I know those things seem almost mundane, but that's kind of what we're talking about when we're thinking about, okay, how can we create this comprehensive, very informative presence that can give our visitors comfort and confidence that they're going to have a great experience and they know what to do, especially on farms that they're often not on. And then when it comes to just the general capturing, the everyday tasks are actually some of the best things that you can be capturing on your farm. You know, walk outside and think of the things that you do and have probably done every single day for decades, if not more. And those are the kind of things that your potential visitors are interested in, because that's what they're coming to see, right? So you don't have to be this elaborate content creator or have this insane plan and videography team. No, you basically just need your iPhone and the things that you're doing, and have a plan to go out, capture that, and then be able to then bring it out to those channels like your website, et cetera, like we've been talking about, with some good descriptions. And that's a really good foundation. So things that you just will want to consider when populating these different areas. So again, in this entire really presentation, what we're talking about is our Open Farm Days listing, our website, newsletters, any sort of business directory listings you may have. Is we're going to want, you know, the most rudimentary: dates, address, location, how to enter. I know that sounds absolutely baseline, but it's shocking actually how many business listings in general, not just farms, actually forget to have this. They forget to have the hours that they're open. They forget to post their address. And it's because these things become so second nature. So I always say, when you're building out your presence, think that you're marketing to the person that has literally no idea where you are, what you've done. They have zero information about you. So you need to start at the absolute baseline and build up from there when it comes to your information that they want to access. I like to say using bullet points can be great, because it's just, you know, very short form, consumable content that gets the very important information across. You know, if it's this big paragraph on your website and they're just on their phone trying to figure out how to get in, that might not be super user friendly. Other ways to relay really key points about your farm and the experience to expect, especially in relation to Open Farm Days, is by utilizing a bunch of other channels that you have at your disposal potentially. So depending on where you're at, some farms like to write blogs, which are just, you know, stories on the website. They like to have be featured on guest blogs, etc. Of course, you have likely a website at your disposal. News releases. So what we do get a lot, and we'll talk about this later on, is we approached a lot as the Open Farm Days team for different stories. So a lot of the time they'll want to feature, hey, we're looking for a farm with XYZ in X region. We can point them towards you. So there's that angle. And then also, you know, feel free to pursue those yourself. If there's a publication in your community and you're like, hey, I got this really interesting Open Farm Days story, reaching out and tapping into those other channels can really pay dividends in getting that message out to the audience, especially that one around you. There's influencer outreach options. We do that as part of our central Open Farm Days plan. But when it comes to you guys, this is actually a marketing point that I feel very strongly about. It can seem a little bit difficult to approach because it's new and it can be a little bit tedious sometimes. But really, I find the best way to do it, in an influencer can be a loose term. If you have people in your community that you know have a platform, maybe they're really active on social, maybe they're even involved in boards or politics or whatever, but they have an audience, reaching out to them, inviting them to the farm and say, hey, we'd love to have you down for the afternoon, or we'd love to serve you whether maybe it's a farm to table dinner, maybe it's you'd like to give them a little kit from your store of jams or produce or whatever, in exchange for some basically content posted about us on their channels. That's as simple as it can be. So don't shy away from the word influencer and influencer marketing. It could be as simple as, hey, we'd love to give you this in exchange for you to do some posts about us or share the information. And oftentimes people are very, very willing to do so, especially because, you know, it greatly benefits them, right? They get a great farm experience. They maybe get some gifts, etc. And it's a really nice mutual relationship. And then one of the best ways really to relay this information, especially as it comes to our audience, is your Open Farm Days profile. So that is something that we have it, and we're going to save that for the future steps. We actually did an entire session on that profile population. But that is really when people are being driven to the Open Farm Days website, which, you know, we have a lot of advertising dollars go towards that. We have a lot of traffic from different directions, and they go to choose farms. The ultimate barometer of that, or the ultimate decision maker, is your listing, how comprehensive it is, and just how well you paint the picture of the experience to be expected on your farm. So we'll get to that in a little bit. I did just want to go over a couple of quick best practices for a few of these different touch points that I mentioned. So when it comes to your farm's individual website, we're definitely in an era where a lot of websites are, they were made maybe a long time ago, and now the standard is raising for how users want these websites to function. A lot of them are, accessed through mobile phones and mobile devices. So the big things I like to say is just make sure that your design of your website is mobile friendly and it looks good on all devices. If I had $1 for every time I was looking at a website and then I opened up the mobile and the logos are cut off and you can't scroll and the buttons are missing. So that's just something, whether it's you that manages your website or someone that you have managing it for you, make sure you're just checking all versions, especially leading up to this event, because a lot of people, if they're coming to your farm, they're pulling out their phone, they're trying to access information on the road, etc. Consistent branding, of course, just matching, the same, whether it's colors, logos, fonts that you're using on your website. It's advisable to use them on your social, in your newsletters, etc. Just because you're creating this very comprehensive online brand presence, and when you can present it as uniform as possible, that's when you get the strongest brand recognition from your audience there. And then this last point, comprehensive information. Back to the point I was saying earlier, just the absolute, in fact, I like to send my website to someone who doesn't, or an event listing to someone who's not involved, and just say, hey, what am I missing here? Because we often go blind to our own listings, or in this day and age now, you can even run it through ChatGPT. You could put the link in there and say, hey, I just want to make sure that I have all the information that a visitor that has never heard anything about my farm might need to know, and it'll give you feedback. So use a friend, use the internet either way, but I would always suggest at least a once over from another set of eyes when it comes to your content listing. Newsletters are something that not everyone does, but especially people I find, or farms that have some sort of storefront or tours or something that they have people actually registering for, then of course you're going to have an email database. So you're going to have all these people's emails, and depending on what your collection process is, you've probably had them opt into email marketing. If that's the case, then you have a really, really valuable tool there for marketing your event, being your newsletter. So we use MailChimp, which is just a great software application that just helps you design really user-friendly, very pretty newsletters, send them out to your list of contacts, very user-friendly. So if you do have the resources in the email list to do so, I think newsletters are a fantastic way to have a direct one-to-one line to your audience. And some of the best practices for these are just subject line. I mean, we've all have email inboxes. If it's not an interesting subject line and you don't know the sender that well, like we're talking from other businesses, a lot of the time it's an immediate delete. So, starting with an engaging subject line, putting valuable content in it. Some people are like, oh, I have a quota of one newsletter a week and I'm going to stick to that. But the second you start sending out newsletters that don't have any valuable information in them is the second that you get into a position where people start unsubscribing because they're like, why are people sending me this newsletter? There's nothing in it, right, for me, nothing to take action on or that would engage me or that would be of value to me. So now back to the profile. So essentially, these lists, and I am cognizant that I have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to send this deck either way, but if it feels like I'm suddenly cruising through a few points, that is why. But in terms of your actual profile itself, of course, dates, especially because not all farms are open both days of the event. The times, this is really important, just when you open, when you close, when the last tour is, when your first tour is, etc. I even noticed as someone who was attending Open Farm Days last year, I was some confusion there just based on some things, just on various things I was even attending. So just, again, really hammering that down. All of the locations, and not just like the pin of your farm. When you get to the farm, they're large properties. Tours start by the wine shed. It has a sign X. Tours start by the chicken coop, which is blue. Things like that actually can really help because people are a little bit disoriented on a farm. They haven't been there, just thinking, okay, what's that user experience? How can I help point them in the right directions? Cost is a big one, especially if you do have extra activities and it's not just that free educational component. So like Tana said, ultimate price transparency is always, always, always key. If there is any age restrictions, if you're a distillery or if it's not child friendly, definitely stating that. And if there's any food offerings, because many people are doing this the full day, they are charting out, okay, where can we get our lunch? Where can we get our snack? That's really important information to them. So in terms of the do not do's, don't be vague. I've beat that one to death already, but that is just, yeah, like if your consumer doesn't understand, you're already falling down the list of farms they want to visit, and you might get avoided or missed altogether. Assuming people know what to expect, again, even stating things as little as it's often muddy, please wear gumboots or appropriate footwear. That's a big one, because people coming from the city, sometimes they'll wear their white runners and then be upset about that. Is there maybe an argument that that's common sense? Maybe, but there's no, I'd say, yeah, just spell out more information than you think you have to, just to appeal to and make sure there's no surprises. In terms of the experience, yeah, I would say focus on storytelling, like talking about the sights and the smells and the animals that they could meet. I find that can be a very powerful way of capturing your audience versus just stats. It's like, hey, come to our farm, we got a tour, it's at this time and it's in this place. Yes, that's comprehensive, but it's not necessarily inviting or compelling. And then this last point is just, we just always advise, avoid tricky subjects on there in terms of politics, religion, etc. Just, we like to keep it very family friendly to your expertise and to focusing on the farm and not deviating to other subject matters that may, again, deter people, etc., or just get us all into situations that aren't supporting of the Open Farm Days goal. So for this overall submission, basically the major checklist, which again we will send, is clear photos of your farm, especially of all the different elements. If you've got animals, if you've got wine, a nice sampling of different photos, the dates and times we'll be participating. This is a little bit repetitive. So longitude and latitude, that is a big one in addition to just your address, because as we know, when we're out on range roads, it can be challenging to get to the exact pin. And then one of the most important pieces is linking back to your social media, your website, so that people can then, follow you. Say they're planning on coming, follow you on Instagram, and encouraging them to do so. I mean, I often include a line that's like, follow us on social to stay informed on our Open Farm Days event, to stay informed on what's happening on the farm, etc. And to your website, because again, the more times you can bring people into your web, into your social media, maybe into your newsletter, then you have that kind of one-to-one communication versus having to rely on the Open Farm Days traffic itself. So for this exact one, we'll just I will also brief through this because there's a couple things at the end I want to talk about, but at a bird's eye view, following all those principles we've initially talked about, using bullet points, which I said earlier, because as you can see, that bullet point section is just more consumable than the first. Getting very granular with the details, use some headings, add some photos, and have it proofed by a neighbor, and then you should be in a really, really excellent spot. So now in terms of, this is the point I really wanted to make sure I had a few minutes to talk about. So that's your guys' end of the marketing, what you guys are contributing. You're making sure you're doing the best possible job of populating your site, your information to capture your audience. But we have a big job too, and that's making sure that we're driving as much traffic as we can to the Open Farm Days site, to the Open Farm Days event as a whole, and raising awareness of that. So we have our website, we have a very active social media, we run Google Ads. We've been, working on our search engine optimization, which means how findable we are online for a very long time. We write a blog every second week, if not every week. We do a lot of advertising via social media. We use influencer marketing, so we have influencer gifts, and we send it to them in exchange for spreading the good word about Open Farm Days. And we also supply farms like yourselves with assets. So course resources like these training sessions, as well as social media assets, which you all have access to. And while we are sending additional newsletters out, I'll continue to put that link in there because it just has things like we're looking at here. One of these is last year, but some kind of generic assets that you can use on your social that saves you from having to become a graphic designer for this event. So yeah, we also do a robust paid strategy, and I think I'll focus most on this in the interest of time on actually the analytics for it. So what we did last year, and I'll just read these through, is through our paid marketing efforts or our media connections, we got almost 2 million impressions on radio, over 4 million impressions on TV, over 200,000 on online paid, over 200,000 estimate on print, for a total of over 6 million impressions across the channels we're using. So, we are putting a lot of effort, dollars, and thought behind our advertising. And I think the most important things for you guys to understand and why we're telling you this is because when we're driving, we're driving 6 million impressions and however many, hundreds of thousands of users to the site. That's where your profiles come in, and to have those dialed and working like very effectively is super key, because then you can capitalize on those visitors and have the best attendance and open farm days experience that you possibly can have on your farm. So quickly, because I got a couple minutes, I'll go back to these. So we also do a lot of print to support, I've been talking a lot about the digital age that we are in, optimizing your digital presence, but we also, there's still value in print, and we still want to equip you. So what we do is we do a number of postcards, like the one seen in this photo. We do posters that those are all in the host farm resources section in fully printable PDFs. So you can print them yourself. You can have them done at a printer. I do a lot of my printing at Staples, actually. Very cost effective, very fast, high quality. And then you can have these things both on your farm. If you were going to trade shows or farmers markets or things and you want to have collateral to hand to people, maybe you have a community billboard, etc. Just know that we are equipping you with the assets that you should need to do that. Should you need something specific too, my email is going to be at the end here. So if you do need something or you need a hand with even like a printing question, do let me know. That's what I'm here for. We try to make all of our assets usable by all farms, so they're not specific, but always looking to assist farms in basically giving themselves the best the marketing presence that they can. So I just like to say that the best thing that you can do from all of this is just capture the real authentic things happening on your farm as thoroughly as you can, and then be sure to use on as many channels that you have the resources to, because I understand you're very, very busy people, and to be as comprehensive as possible. So capture that farm essence, be very thoughtful when you are writing it out on your chosen channels. Maybe that is just your social and your open farm days listing. That's okay. Whatever you have the ability to do. And that should bring you to a position where you're doing the best work you can and should be quite successful in attracting people to your farm. So if you do need any assistance, questions, etc., my email is right here. Same to Tanis, we are all contractors, but my most open day for open farm days is Mondays. But I do check my email obviously every day throughout the week. So the invite is open for that.
All right, Cameo. So in the chat, we've got just a request about when do posters and postcards typically come out?
Excellent question. So I'm trying to figure out how to stop sharing my screen here. So those come out, the posters are actually live. And the postcards are just the recruitment postcard is live right now. So those, generally speaking, last year they came out a bit later, but this year, this is my second year on the job. I'm like, wait a minute, we have all the information. There's no reason they can't be ready now. So they're actually already, many of them are linked in the host farm resources for 2025. Anything that is yet to be posted, that will be, whenever I make a major update, that is included in a newsletter to you guys. The bulk of your newsletters so far have been around trainings, but as we get into this new year, they'll be becoming more oriented surrounding your resources and different deadlines, etc., for open farm days.
Marvelous. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We are top of the hour, so we'll just wrap things up. And again, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to help you with all of your planning needs. And we will send out the new code for the passwords for the host side immediately as well. So watch your inboxes for that. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Appreciate
everyone.
you guys all taking the time.